because I know, at least for my part, when I was gonna ask you like how does it affect you. Um, that's one of the main things like I could quote since you were there.
Yeah, fine.
Um, because I kind of wonder. I kind of want to relate kind of what you've gone through to what maybe others have gone through in like the Vietnam War, like reports from there, how like people felt in that war, because how we kind of removed our troops from there, and how we removed our troops from Afghanistan.
So, like in terms of how it affects me, I mean that's a big, broad thing. I can cover it with you.
We can go more specific. You think that would help a little bit?
Just record it. That way you
Yeah.
can.
That's what I'm doing.
If it's ready to record you.
I was just gonna let it.
Okay. So I would say, when I first went over there, I was deployed with the very first wave of people that went in 2002. So Afghanistan kicked off in 2002, shortly after September 11th, with the bombings at the World Trade Center. Once that was done, everything kicked off. We got deployed. Our original mission was to go there and just look for Taliban and Al Qaeda, and that was the original mission, was to just destroy Taliban and Al Qaeda forces. We went there with that mission, with that mindset. We didn't have a mindset on westernizing people, trying to help them, trying to save their economy, community, all that stuff. It was just to look for Taliban and Al Qaeda. So we deploy, we go there, and we do exactly that. Get into a bunch of firefights, kill a bunch of bad guys. And my mindset, we're winning. Okay, cool, we did our job. We're getting payback for the bombings and the airplanes and all that stuff that they did on the U.S. soil. So to me, initially it was like, all right, it was a win. We come back home, we refit, we get ready for our next deployment, because now we find out that it's going to be like an ongoing rotation to where the mission is still kill, capture bad guys. So we deploy again within like that same year. So this is like toward the end now of 2002 on the second deployment. Same mission, same mindset, go there, kill bad guys. We do that again, spend 3 to 4 months, just night after night, doing missions. Get toward the end of that deployment, and we rotate back home, and now the mission's slowly starting to change to, okay, we have done a decent job taking out a lot of bad guys and got them on the run. The people that we were looking for were now on the move and going into Pakistan and nearby countries and fleeing Afghanistan. So the U.S., because they love to help and make people better, the mission changed from capturing and killing bad guys to assisting the Afghan forces to have their own democracy, let them establish a government that they can provide equal opportunity to their people, provide them stabilization across humanitarian, economic, governing, like I mentioned, and infrastructure. And that's not necessarily the job of a U.S. soldier, but it is our job to help facilitate those people to come in and do those types of jobs.
I have a thing. So how far did their nation get with like improving their infrastructure, their government, their democracy? How far did they get from the time like kind of like your mission changed from just like going in there and trying to eliminate the people who did stuff like on U.S. soil to helping them?
So they didn't. I mean, when we went there in early 2002, I could clearly see, and everybody else could see, that these people did not have a reliable government. First of all, they had no infrastructure, they had no reliable power sources, water, food, all that. I mean, they were basic farmers that cultivated and grew all their own food and products. Um, their their government that they did have was very extremely corrupt, and if somebody had power, like we would go from area to area and compound to compound, like little city to little city. Some cities had no power, no water, no nothing. And it was because their government was extremely corrupt and they didn't want to provide them anything. So that was one thing that we realized, and the only people that were actually keeping them alive and allowing them to get power, water, the basic humanitarian supplies that you need, were the Taliban and Al Qaeda. They were actually providing for the people out there. I mean, it cost them. They had to fight and do things for them, but they were the ones providing for them. And once we ran them out of the country, now they're trying to figure out who's going to be doing our governance and who's going to be providing infrastructure and all the other basic support. And that's where the U.S. stepped in and said, hey, well, we will do it. We will start sending contractors and other agencies to build up your government and build up your infrastructure. So really from 2002 till about 2004, they didn't have anything until we started bringing assets in there and other people to start building up their infrastructure.
And then that went all the way to 2019?
Yeah, and that lasted all the way through until basically 2019. And it was interesting to see it because I did 16 deployments. I mean, I basically deployed to Afghanistan every year until I retired from the military. And I could see the growth of the economy. I could see the growth of their government. It started in a very positive manner. But I think the turning point was around probably 2009, 2010. Because by then, after about 5 good years of tons of money from the United States and NATO countries, Europeans, Italians, I mean, everybody was helping out, but the U.S. was putting a lot more into it. I could see that, power's on, water's coming in, sewage is, where it needs to be. I mean, that people aren't living in filth anymore. Schools are being built, education's being done. It's what I relate to as they're westernizing. That's like a term a lot of people don't like to use, but the United States has a problem with westernizing other nations to try to get them to do what they want them to look like. Like they tried it with the Philippines and other people, and we're going to westernize you guys and make you look like, they did with the Native Americans. We're going to westernize you. And that's what they try to do with the Afghanis. And I knew right away, once they started building schools and telling them that, hey, you're going to vote this way, and you guys are going to be basically Republicans or Democrats, and you're going to do the things that we do in the United States. And that's not how they live. They've never lived like that. They're tribal people. They have their own way of doing things, and we can't westernize people like that.
Did the market crash, or I guess like the 2000? It happened in 2009, right? When
it started getting pretty bad. Yeah.
How did that affect? Because I imagine that must have affected stuff, because everybody's like losing jobs and like.
It doesn't really affect them because they're on a separate pot of money. I mean, they were getting funded by the Department of Defense, and there's just tons of money coming into them.
Okay, so
that didn't really affect them. No.
Okay.
No. What affected them, and I think what, in my opinion, the turning point that started making the United States basically say, hey, we're going to start pulling out of this war because it's just not working for us, was the constant struggle with trying to enact leadership and get people in the right government positions. Was extremely corrupt and hard to do. There was an extreme amount of, I don't know, I guess the best way to say it is mistrust across their government and their higher members of the military and the police force, where it was just corruption all the way around. And it got to the point where everybody else wanted more money. They wanted better facilities. They wanted better this, better that. and they were keeping a lot of the money for themselves. The United States was giving them, and the NATO countries were giving them, and they weren't giving it to the people where it was supposed to go. And we started seeing that. Everybody was reporting it. Hey, like we were reporting it as we're doing our missions. It ultimately came back to where it was, and where it was like, you know what, we just got to cut our losses and realize we're not gonna change these people. We've already gotten rid of the Taliban and Al Qaeda for the most part. I mean, there's still small factions of them there, but for the most part, we got rid of them, and we were just dealing with small fights from there on out.